vegetation. So our lesson focuses that climate, weather, and vegetation cannot be studied in isolation. What that means is it cannot be studied separately. So one influences and impacts the other. So climate influences and impacts weather. Weather then influences and impacts vegetation. But to understand it better, we need to look at it further. So it refers to the short-term state of the Earth atmosphere at any specific time or place. It is what you see outside on any particular day. So the weather tells us our temperature, which is how hot or cold it is. It gives us precipitation, which means is it raining or isn't it raining or is it snowing, which we do not typically experience in Cape Town. So what is important to know is that it's short term, which means I can search what is the weather today. I cannot search what is the weather next year or the following year. So here's a lovely example showing us that today's weather is 33 degrees, quite hot, and we can see next week Tuesday's weather. However, I cannot see 2 years from now or 5 years from now's weather. And we have a graph showing us our weather temperature. Let's move on. So it involves the long-term study of weather conditions, averages, patterns in a region over extended periods of time. Extended periods of time means it studies the long period. So long period in this case would be years. So we study climate over years. How is it connected to weather? Yeah, we can see that it says the study of weather conditions, averages, and patterns. So what happens is we look at weather patterns. How often does it rain in a particular area for the past few years? How often has the temperature been extremely high or extremely low in a particular area over the past few years? And then we make our judgment on it. So we know that that area's climate is high. Why? Because the research has shown that it's been consistently high. So, for example, Egypt or a rainforest climate will be different because the one is no, generally a wet climate and the other one is generally a dry climate. Climate change is a slow shift in what is regular or what has research shown us. So the patterns research shown us, so the pattern says that in Cape Town, it's hot during summer months and it's rainy during and cold during winter months. However, during climate change, that may switch up. So we may experience hot days during our winter months or rainy or cold days during our summer months. So, for example, January may be 190 millimeters instead of June, and vice versa, which means June may then be only 30 millimeters, and that's due to climate change. Of vegetation. So it includes all plants, crops that grow in a particular area. Here's an example, and let's move on to highlight what's important. So it's important to understand that this is a particularly dry area. It's a particularly dry area with vegetation that itself is quite fine leaf and shrubby. It says that the area generally catches on fire every 10 to 15 years. However, with climate change, we know that that can be sooner or it can happen more often, which becomes quite problematic for both humans and the animals living in that area. Study, we can understand that drought is a huge risk and intense wildfires. So drought can limit access to water while wildfires can damage the ecosystem. In a particularly dry area, which means that water access can again be limited as water sources may shrink and soil erosion may be a problem which affects vegetation in the area. Instead of a dry area, this is quite a humid, dense area. However, if um, climate change does occur, this can become extremely terrible for the vegetation in this area as they are reliant, they need the water that they are used to grow sufficiently. Opposite in this case study. In this case study, we look more at how climate change can cause flooding, erosions, It can cause infrastructure, damage of infrastructure, damage of habitation, extremely problematic for both the animals and the humans living near the coastline. And then our last slide would be our reference list. Three, all of these resources are quite verified. Please feel free to read through it if you need any additional information. Thank you.